Okay, guys, here's your C for tonight. Discussion C. The title is Hospital Economics. Okay, so we're going to dig into that tonight for C. So please join me. Okay, the takeaway: hospital economics are not abstract, they are architectural. The financial fate of a health system is, is written room by room in the quiet hum of an MRI suite and the chaotic current of an emergency department. A narrative op ed works best when it makes the truth visceral. So, below is a polished, story driven piece you can use to or adapt for publication. Okay, here we go. The rooms were the rooms where hospitals live or die. A narrative op-ed. Hospitals like to talk about the system, the payer mix, the reimbursement environment, the labor market. But if you really want to understand where a hospital thrives or where it bleeds out, you have to walk the hallways the truth the truth the truth is simpler and more intimate than any balance sheet. A hospital's financial survival is determined room by room. You can feel it the moment you step into an operating suite. The air is cool, almost relevant. Stainless steel gleams. A dozen professionals move with choreographed precision. The room is a cathedral of Babel events. CPT codes stacked like bricks, each one a revenue engine. Surgeons joke that OR time is the most expensive real estate in America. And they're not wrong. Every minute is monetized. Every implant, every anesthesia unit, every fluoroscopy image adds to the ledger. Walk down the hall through and the mood shifts on the inpatient medical floor. The lights are softer. The nurses' station is cluttered with coffee cups and half finished catering. Here, the work is relentless, but the reimbursement is not. A patient with heart failure may require 12 hours of nursing care, but Medicare pays the same flat rate whether she stabilizes in 2 days or 5. The math is miraculous. Labor costs rise by the hour. Revenue does not. In these rooms, margin is a ghost felt in its absence. Then there is the emergency department. If the OR is a cathedral, then the emergency department is a storm. Stretchers line hallways. A nurse triages 3 patients at once. A man with chest pain arrives, uninsured. A child spikes a fever. A woman in withdrawal screams for help. No one is turning away. No one is scheduled. No one is predictable. The ED is the beating heart of the hospital's mission, and the hemorrhage point of its finances. Medicaid pays pennies on the dollar. The uninsured pay nothing at all. Staffing costs soar because acuity never sleeps. The ED is where hospitals lose money, not because they are inefficient, but because they are humane. Contrast that with the imaging suite. A patient lies still inside the MRI bore. The machine thumping like a mechanical heartbeat. The technologist tapes a few keys, types a few keys, or taps a few keys. In 45 minutes, the hospital will bill a technical fee that often exceeds what a nurse makes in a shift. Imaging is quiet, efficient, and extinguishingly profitable. The room prints margin like a mint. Radiation therapy rooms tell a similar story. The linear accelerator hums as beams of energy target a tumor with millimeter precision. Treatments are scheduled, predictable, reimbursed at rates that reflect their complexity. These rooms are the rare places where high tech care and financial sustainability coexist. but walk into a behavioral health unit, and the contrast is jarring. A nurse sits with a patient in crisis, offering calm in the middle of a psychiatric hurricane. Staffing ratios are high, reimbursement is low, census fluctuates widely. Behavioral health is the room where society's neglect becomes a hospital's defect. And then there is the ICU. Monitors beep, in dissonant harmony. A ventilator sighs. A nurse adjusts a drip that costs more per hour than some families spend on groceries in a week. The ICU essential, life saving, and almost always underwater financially. Complexity is expensive. Reimbursement rarely keeps pace. This is the quiet truth policymakers rarely confront. Hospitals don't fail because they mismanage. They fail because the rooms that define their mission are the rooms that lose money. We have built a system where the profitable rooms, ORs, imaging suites, infusion centers, float the rest of the hospital like pontoons. When those pontoons weaken, the whole structure lists. Rural hospitals drown first. Community hospitals follow. Large systems survive by expanding the profitable rooms, outsourcing the unprofitable ones. But a hospital is not a collection of revenue streams. It is a promise, a promise that someone will answer the door at 2 a.m. A promise that a nurse will sit with a suicidal teenager. A promise that an ICU bed will be there when your father cannot breathe. If we want hospitals to survive, we must stop pretending that mission and margin can be separated by a hallway. The rooms that save lives must also be allowed to save the institution. Until then, every hospital CEO knows the truth. You can predict a hospital's future by walking through its rooms. If you want, I can turn this into a more policy forward version, a shorter op-ed, a newspaper, or a speech for legislative testimony. Okay, guys, here's the second part of C. Behavioral health intake failure is not a clerical inconvenience. It is a structural collapse that drains $600,000 per month from psychiatric and rehab facilities. And leaves patients stranded in crisis. Below is a long form narrative essay that treats the issue with the gravity, texture, and emotional resonance you prefer in your writing. The 600,000 door that never opens. A narrative essay on behavioral health, intake failure, and the quiet financial catastrophe inside America's psychiatric and rehab facilities. The crisis in behavioral health is often described in sweeping terms: too few beds, too little funding, too much demand. But the real story is smaller, more intimate, and far more devastating. It unfolds in the narrow space between a referral and an admission. In the fragile handoff between an emergency department and a psychiatric unit, in the phone call that goes unanswered, or the fax that never arrives. It unfolds in the doorways. It unfolds in the doorway, and that doorway is failing. Every month, psychiatric hospitals and rehab facilities lose 600,000 because patients who should be admitted never make it inside, not because the beds don't exist, not because the clinicians aren't ready, but because the intake process, the front door of behavioral health, is cracked, jammed, and collapsing under the weight of a system that treats referral management as a clerical work rather than clinical infrastructure. The anatomy of a failed referral. Picture a behavioral health intake office on a Tuesday morning. The phones are already ringing. A nurse is trying to complete an assessment while simultaneously searching for a missing medication list. A social worker is on hold with an insurer, listening to tiny music loop for the seventh minute. A case manager is scanning a fax that arrived without a cover sheet, trying to guess which patient it belongs to. A family sits in the lobby, exhausted, clutching a packet of papers from the emergency department. Their son has been awake for 3 days. He is pacing, muttering, Terrified, the ED, the emergency department physician said he needed inpatient care. The psychiatric facility agreed, but the intake coordinator is still waiting for the insurance authorization. The bed is ready. The staff is ready. The patient is ready. The system is not. This is how referral dies. Not with a dramatic refusal, but with a slow, scaffolding series of delays. A missed call, a lost fax, a shift change, a question about coverage from a form that needs a signature, a moment of chaos in the emergency department. Multiply this by dozens of patients each week, and the financial hemorrhage becomes staggering. The economics of the invisible collapse. Behavioral health units operate on margins so thin they might as well be transparent. Every empty bed is a financial wound. Every failed referral is a missed admission worth thousands of dollars. When intake fails, beds sit empty while staff remain on the clock. Fixed costs, utilities, security, clinical staffing continue to rise. Consensus becomes volatile, making scheduling impossible. Clinicians burn out under unpredictable workloads. Facilities lose up to $600,000 per month in unrealized admissions. One psychiatric hospital saw its functional capacity drop to 60% simply because intake calls were not returned within 15 minutes. Another lost 39% of its floor staff in 6 weeks because consensus swings made it impossible to maintain safe staffing ratios. This is not mismanagement, it is structural neglect. The human cost behind the financial cost. Every failed referral is a person in crisis who remains untreated. A teenager with suicidal ideation waits 36 hours in the emergency department hallway because the Psych unit never called back. A mother with postpartum depression is told to try again tomorrow because the intake is understaffed. A man with schizophrenia is discharged with a list of phone numbers instead of a treatment plan because the facility couldn't verify his insurance in time. These are not administrative errors. They are clinical failures with consequences measured in readmissions, homelessness, incarceration, and death. The myth of no beds available. Ask an emergency physician why patients can't get into psychiatric units and they'll say no beds. But that is rarely true. The beds exist. The problem is that the intake process is so fragmented, so fragile, so dependent on the manual work arounds that the bed might as well not exist. A single missed phone call can erase a $12,000 admission. A 20-minute delay in insurance verification can cost the facility $50,000 in monthly revenue. A jammed fax machine. Yes, we can still use fax machines. Can wipe out an entire day of referrals. The system is not failing because it lacks resources. It is failing because it lacks coherence. The fix is embracingly simple. Behavioral health intake should function like an air traffic controller tower, centralized, coordinated, and staffed by professionals trained to manage high stakes transitions. Instead, it functions like a voicemail box. The solutions are not complicated. Dedicated 24/7 intake teams, trained in crisis triage, real-time referral dashboards that track every patient from emergency department to admission, automatic alerts for stalled referrals, standardized triage protocols across facilities. Insurance pre-checks before crisis hits, direct digital links between emergency department and psych units. These are not innovations, they are basic operational compliance competencies. The moral argument. We cannot keep telling families that psychiatric care is unavailable when the truth is that the system simply failed to pick up the phone. Referral management is not a bureaucratic detail, it is the front door to treatment, and the right And right now, that door is stuck. Hospitals are losing money. Patients are losing hope. Communities are losing lives. Fixing intake will not solve every problem in behavioral health, but it will stop the bleeding financially and humanly. Humanly, it will ensure that when a patient reaches out or reaches for help, the system reaches back, and it will transform the most dangerous moment in psychiatric care, the moment between crisis and admission, into a pathway instead of a dead end. Okay, guys, that is your C for tonight. I will see everybody tomorrow for shows or later. Haven't decided yet. I will let you know if I pop back on. For now, Gator Wellness, take care, folks.